All right, NAI football fans, this is Corey Thorpe back with another edition of the NAIF Ball live show, flag edition, powered by Adcraft Custom Apparel and Merch, the best in the business since 1974. If you really want to see what Adcraft is able to do for a school, then go look at our Twitter feed. We retweeted last just today their Grandview web store. Go look at the great gear and the prices that they're able to provide for Grandview. They can do that for you too. Check them out. Go see what they can do for you. All right, Angelo, it was last week when we went through this, we talked about the fact that we might have a little shakeup in the polls, and I think we I don't know if it shook up quite as much as we wanted, but there was definitely some streaks getting snapped around here, weren't there?
Absolutely. And I think honestly, too, it was something, to reiterate to your point. I mean, we knew that there was the possibility of it happening and we saw it happen. And then even in terms of this weekend, and no spoilers, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but like it continued through this weekend and, can't wait to discuss how we got to those points.
Absolutely. The big two games we said to keep an eye on this week. One was Warner Florida Memorial. Warner picks up precisely where they left off, a 44-0 win over the Lions. But the big one, the big game to talk about, Kaiser snaps the unbeaten, the streak of the losing streak. There's the thing. Words are hard. To the Thomas Nighthawks, a 6-0 win there, where, man, Kaiser is just good enough. Those two picks that Sidney Woodman had, just absolute game changers for a game that was so very close in every other facet.
Yeah, and again, I mean, even when you look at that contest, Corey, it's surprising that as close as it was, and with all the weapons that Kaiser had, they still only managed to get one touchdown, which I think adds to the testament of the Nighthawks defense. Regardless of how the game was being played, and even though it was a highly defensive battle on both sides, it wasn't something where, it was out of sorts, for want of a better word. I mean, this was still a one possession contest at the end of the day where Kaiser, it took them the second quarter to grab all the points that they needed, and it was just a battle back and forth. But I think with Thomas's side, for the second time this season, we've seen another game where they've had their opportunities, they've had chances to win, but Alexa Wilson with the multi-game interception deal does make things a little difficult, but not to necessarily say that that's the cause of it, but just the offensive mistakes that were made by Thomas as well in that contest that Kaiser was able to capitalize on, also played a factor in terms of the missed opportunities that they had to potentially get a couple of scores in West Palm.
Yeah, so I mean, what Coach Palmer would sit here and tell you is that their defense didn't play good enough because they didn't generate the turnovers. And Thomas, more so than almost any school that I've seen in the NAI, their entire game is based off of their defense creating turnovers. And it just didn't happen. And for Alexa to give up two possessions in a one-possession game while your defense doesn't create any extra possessions, when that doesn't happen, Thomas's offense just falls flat.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's, even like we were talking with Coach Palmer and Thomas, like way before the beginning of this year started, this was going to be a year where they had to make some changes too. And unfortunately, sometimes in order to try to find what the team's new identity is going to be, you're going to find out some key pieces. I mean, you got Alexa Wilson. Of course, there's Kiana Akol, but then you're also thinking about Tara Llorente as well, who got a couple of, throwing appearances, and she's made some statistical adjustments, for want of a better word, but she got some serious experience against arguably the team to beat this year. And it really just boils down to sometimes in certain games, you just got to find experiences and you just got to find some way to gain that game day atmosphere that you need, whether it's against a JUCO school, whether it's against a Sun Conference opponent like Kaiser, or even if it's somebody from the KCAC. I mean, at some point, you got to gain some experience in terms of what other options might be potential out there. And again, for Llorente, she finished, I believe it was 7 for 11 and got 46 passing yards out of it. But to that point, it's like you still got to find out what's going to potentially work for the offense. And, you know, from an opinion standpoint, it's you almost kind of wonder, what Thomas's offensive identity is still. I mean, like they have options. I mean, we think of the names like, that are all there and that have been kind of the offensive drive points at this point. Of course, Kiera Knight is another name that we've seen as well. But in terms of the go-to receivers, the go-to, dump off players, running backs, if you will, I mean, there's a lot of options for Thomas's end. But all that to say is, I think from an identity standpoint, Thomas is not the same Thomas that we knew of from an offensive standpoint, and it showed in this contest. You didn't have the security blanket of Britt Delva that could get you those guaranteed yardage in critical down situations. And it showed on the offensive side versus Kaiser, where, again, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. This is the same group of young ladies for the fourth straight year. You keep that core nucleus group, you add a couple of other offensive stars to the mix, and they were just able to keep things status quo.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how Thomas bounces back. Got a couple of games in which you can definitely do that coming up this week. And, we'll see if Coach Palmer, looks to experiment a little bit. Alexa's not a freshman anymore. You don't have to worry as much about impacting a freshman psyche. So we'll definitely have to see how that all plays out. Be interesting for sure. So,
and Corey, don't mean to cut you off, but one other point to make within that style of things in terms of how many chances Thomas has had. From a passing standpoint, Thomas did outpass the Kaiser Seahawks. Again, Alexa Wilson true. Knocking on 150 yards. Jazz Roden only got 117. There was only one touchdown compared to the many drive opportunities for Thomas. And again, as you saw there, all the interceptions that added on, it all came to a head at some point. So that should tell you in a nutshell that Thomas had their chances and they just weren't able to capitalize on it, compared to the Seahawks, where any opportunities they did have and the opportunities to shut them down defensively, they took those chances well and they were able to come out with the dub.
So did that impact then the poll? And the answer is really not really. Voters still saw that Thomas went over Ottawa. Ottawa still being a team that is dangerous, swapping in a Baker squad who lost to Midland. I'm not 100% certain, honestly, what to do with the KCAC for any team not named Ottawa myself. I mean, you've got, Midland there who's lost 2 games. You've got Kansas Wesleyan who's lost a game to Baker, and you've got Baker who's lost 2 games. It's kind of hard to figure out who's second best there.
See, the thing is, and with the way the KCAC is this year, Corey, is it's kind of a Mexican standoff when you think of who that next position is, because ideally you could always say, oh, we got 3 teams that are tied for 6, but it's not always that simple to say that, oh, we got a clear-cut 6th best team, or let's just, have a 5-way tie for 6th place. Because again, to remind our viewers, this is not a standings poll by any means. It's a rankings poll, and there are factors that you have to consider in that as well. It's not you have to make some tough calls sometimes. And again, with the wins that Kansas Wesleyan had and Baker's drop, I mean, it's made things more difficult, in terms of trying to evaluate who the top 6 are as we get into every single week. But, with that said, Midland, like we talked about several weeks back, they've had a record-breaking season so far at 7-2, and so this shouldn't discourage all the Warrior fans that are listening out there in terms of they're trying to make their way in the polls. But they're right there and they're making it extremely tough. Like they have a good, solid case at being in this top 6.
I will say there are 4 very well-defined groups within the effective top 6 plus 3 receiving votes teams. They are crystal clear. Kaiser's got 47 points. Warner's got 41. You're within 6 points of each other there at 1 and 2. St. Thomas at 3 has 29. So you have a gap there. Thomas has 21. You're kind of close there. Ottawa has 14. Kansas Wesleyan has 11. So you've got this first, second, and third pairs, and then you've got Midland and Baker tied at 2 points, and Weber got one sixth place vote this week. So you've definitely got a top, middle, lower edge, and a we'll see what you're doing kind of tier.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just how the standings roll in terms of, how everybody's getting ranked out. Again, I think, looking into this poll, St. Thomas got another win. Things are rolling around well. But again, there's going to be some people that'll argue, well, hey, Thomas only lost 6-0 to the number one ranked team. Doesn't that account for something? But again, it's, how you look at the season. And again, not to try to continue to talk about Thomas, but when you're looking at the Nighthawks schedule now, because of the level peak of success they're at, this is technically their worst start in program history. I mean, I don't think we've ever would have anticipated them having two losses before we hit the month of April.
That is
so.
True
I mean,
statement.
With all that said, it's, to be fair as well, both of your conference losses are to the top two teams, and sometimes that's how this conference schedule rolls and operates. But moving forward, I think, they're going to do just fine, and they're going to find their stride in due time before the tournament hits for them.
And with that, we'll be back after this word from our friends at AdCraft.
So you want to create and sell custom merch for your team or business. That's exciting, but where do you begin? How much inventory should you order? How do you distribute orders? AdCraft has your answers. Streamline the way you offer custom merch by utilizing our risk-free web store service. We ship directly to each customer, and we have the fastest turnaround in the game. Raise funds for your team or get merch to your employees and patrons. Contact AdCraft today, and let's bring your merch to life.
Absolutely, and again, that merch that they've got going on for Grandview right now at the web store is absolutely phenomenal, and should go see. Just envision what that would look like with your team on it. That'd be phenomenal. So, really, Angelo, there are a lot of games going on this upcoming week, but there is one game that stands above the rest as kind of a what to watch for, and that's going to be Ottawa, Kansas Wesleyan. Can Kansas Wesleyan can they add on to Ottawa's worst by record season in program history?
That whole coin idiom, if wishes were horses. And I think, again, as the Coyotes are looking at how things have played out, I mean, yes, St. Thomas, and Kaiser have had their way with the Braves this year. But like I said earlier, I don't think that this is going to be a contest where the Braves are going to completely collapse. I mean, they got their feet back under them when they played Cotty earlier, and they were able to get that 60-0 win. But again, anything goes. And I mean, there's still a couple of more games that they have lined up before them that are kind of like tune-up games. But again, to reiterate from the KCAC standpoint, I think, despite from what we're seeing with Ottawa, though, I still don't think that there is a team that is going to make things that close where Braves fans are going to experience another scare for the rest of the regular season, truth be told. Kansas Wesleyan has done an excellent job so far this season. I mean, for what they've had, and Iwata doing what she's doing at the quarterback position. But as of right now, I mean, you're just not seeing the pieces come into play for them. Like, there's nothing that has shown from a statistical standpoint, or even from watching in the game, that there is going to be that potential that we're going to have a serious game on our hands. All that to say, I think it's going to be exciting, yes, because again, it is Ottawa and Kansas Wesleyan, but personally, I would be surprised if this ends up being a really close contest.
This week is a bit of a KCAC murderers row, shall we say, for Ottawa as they face Baker in a couple days on Wednesday. On Thursday, they face Kansas Wesleyan. And on Saturday, they face Midland. So, look, man, you get through these 3 games, and all of a sudden you're in April, and you're feeling real good if you're Ottawa, and you're getting real close at that point to clinching the KCAC regular season. Honestly, with a month to go.
Well, again, that's what happens. And again, granted, it's been fairly close so far. I mean, Midland, couple losses. Kansas Wesleyan, 1 loss. Baker, couple losses. I mean, in terms of that second spot, yes, there is a tight race for it. And like we discussed at the beginning of the year, we knew that there was going to be a potential for that fighting spot to see who could be the runner-up in the KCAC. But in terms of getting the top dog spot, there's got to be more work done by the other challenging teams in the KCAC to really give Ottawa a run for its money.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that sense, this week there's not a absolute ton of top tier matchups. Both Weber and Warner are playing Fort Lauderdale. Kansas Wesleyan's playing Graceland. Kaiser's playing Florida Memorial. St. Thomas travels to Weber. Thomas plays Reinhardt and Point. Milligan and Campbellsville play, get that independent conference rivalry going. Kansas Wesleyan at Cotty, Bethel at Graceland, Southwestern at St. Mary. There's not an absolute ton of top tier matchups, so it will be interesting to see if any of these teams has a unexpected loss of sorts, or if we're just going to get straight chalk.
I mean, I don't want to start making any early predictions here, Corey, but like from the list that we have going on this weekend, I think there might potentially be 2 trap games if we even want to call it. But again, based off the evidence, it's really hard to make that argument. So like the first game I'd say would be St. Thomas going to Weber. Mm-hmm. Ideally, St. Thomas has had their way with Weber for, pretty much every time they've had the series, but Weber's been known to have a little bit of magic whenever you're going into the Warrior Grass field and you don't know what to anticipate with them. I mean, Jeff Molesky has been known to pull a few rabbits out of his hat before, and St. Thomas, granted, especially as the last year, they've been known to have a rough start and then they hit a certain streak, but as soon as that winning streak is over, they might lose a couple of games in a row and things just get them to a mid to near end of season slump. We don't know if the Bobcats are going to have that this year. And again, that's an argument within itself because again, right now, St. Thomas has been playing lights out flag. Head coach Eric Berzenko and what he's done with the squad. And then you got the play of Jada Graham, Leah Cruz, the rest of the gang. I mean, like they have a system in place. And so to argue that could potentially be, the trap game for St. Thomas it's tough. I mean, like that's an unpopular opinion at the very least. And then the other game I would say would be the Milligan-Campbellsville game. Again, the favorites in that one would be Milligan, but you never know Campbellsville, if they have the right mojo going, that could be a trap game and a potential upset. But outside of that, it's, those would be the only 2 games I would think of off the top of mind if we had to name some trap games this week.
Campbellsville is 1-0 against Milligan this year, giving Milligan one of its 3 losses. Right now, conference-wise, we're not going to see the Sun get done until mid-April when Warner and Kaiser play on April 18th. In the KCAC with Ottawa playing Wesleyan, Baker, Midland, the 1-2-2 on the conference loss, and if Ottawa sweeps those, makes it 2 losses, 3 losses, 3 losses. Yeah, I think we're starting to see we're getting to the end game here of the season. The Sun Conference tournament is that's the easiest one to pull up for me. Is at the end of the month, April 25th through the 27th. Let's see if I can pull and then the KCAC tournament is April 20th through the 21st. So we are less than a month away, really, from knowing who's getting conference championship rings, and who's going to be able to, who's going to be solidifying their spots atop the conference. I assume that they're probably starting to poll the coaches at this point and starting to get some coaches poll numbers from NFL Flag and NRCX, trying to get a handle on who's going to get those top seeds.
For the first time, I think ever, the argument would now shift towards how do you determine the seedings based off of the program's winning records instead of it being the 500 records, or, everybody knew who the top 4, 5, 6 teams were. But realistically now it's like, even in terms of if you're ranking 3 through 6, who's potentially the teams that will be ranked there. And I think, honestly, Corey, it's going to come down to these upcoming games that they have. And that's most likely what I anticipate RCX and NFL Flag to look at, is who beat who in the season. And regardless of what the record is, what was the head-to-head matchup like? And that's going to be a significant portion of the criteria in terms of who should rightfully be in their said seed position. Like, for example, with Ottawa losing 3 games, it's a very tough argument to put the Braves in the top 4 in terms of the seedings, only unless if Ottawa wins out and the Sun Conference teams start beating up on each other in the regular season,
100%.
Just like gauntlet style. And it's highly unlikely to think about that because, again, you already got Warner and Kaiser, and after this weekend, it's guaranteed that the Sun Conference Championship will be held either in Lake Wales or West Palm. That's regardless of all the situational stuff you can think of, it's very tough to see another team stepping up at this point, even if you think about the St. Thomas situation, because they've already lost to Warner. They still have yet to play Kaiser, and even in that historical series, Kaiser's had the Bobcats number for the longest time. Yeah. So all that to say, it's going to really come down to, the Warner Royals or the Kaiser Seahawks, that game, the last game of the regular season, to see who gets hosting rights. But then from there, as we look at the seedings overall, you're expecting Thomas to have another loss, and you're expecting St. Thomas to come away with 2 losses. And again, Ottawa to win on out just for them to crack the top 4. I mean, it's going to be very clear cut in terms of those seedings, how you base everything off of those contests. Because again, Ottawa dropped all 3. How do you argue that they get a higher seeding than those Sun Conference teams? I don't know.
Yeah, there's no... unless someone in the Sun falters badly, there's no way you can do it. Now, the fun thing is, we have 20 teams participating this year in the regular season. How many are going to participate in the postseason? Might not be 20. Wasn't everyone last year. Wasn't everyone the year before that either. But that being said, of the 20 that are participating this year, 10 of them, fully 50%, have a winning percentage, of 667 or better, which is, when you're looking at, that's a fine dividing line between Ottawa at 6-3, Thomas at 4-2, Weber at 4-2, and then Milligan at 4-3, Campbellsville at 3-3, Southwestern at 3-4, and it just goes downhill from there. But no one at 500.
And that again comes with, when you look at it in that perspective, it really comes down to most of those teams being 667 or better. Those are teams where we're seeing the roundabout win. So hypothetically, that's like, and I'm just giving an example out there, but you got, say, Milligan, who hasn't beaten Campbellsville. Campbellsville's beaten Milligan, but Southwestern has beaten Campbellsville, but yet Milligan's beaten Southwestern. So there's like this loop rotation of teams beating each other, and as a result, from a round robin standpoint, everybody's better naturally. You even think about something as simple as a 4-team round robin. The possibility of there being 3 2-1 teams and one team being 0-3, that also plays a factor as well. And to your point, Corey, with the overall standings and most of those teams being 667 or better, just look at the look at the bottom 6 teams.
Oh
I
gosh.
mean, you're looking at
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 7 teams that have had 1 win or less.
Yeah.
And that adds up from a mathematical standpoint why all these teams have a 667 or 10 of the teams have a 667 average or better, is
Really
because
does.
we have a good several handful of teams that have struggled this season and can't even get to 2 wins by this point as we head towards April.
Yeah, I mean, I will say at least Florida Memorial gotta win. Get them off the schneid. Hey, Graceland played a game. I am stoked for the Jackets that they're able to get it off the ground. Poor St. Mary over there bearing the brunt of the KCAC, but yeah, exactly. No, you're right. There's a full 7 teams who are 1-6 or worse. So you do have 3 very broad categories, and that's going to be really interesting how they pull that in, because that top half is really good. The middle half is as the children say these days, mid, and then the bottom half is the bottom half. And how do you divide that up to make it even and fair for everyone?
See, to me, Corey, it's almost like you have to go back to what RCX did a couple of years ago and create a gold and silver bracket, or just create an upper tournament and a lower tournament. The top 10 teams go at it for double elimination. The bottom 11 teams go at it for double elimination, or even based off of the way the comparison stands up. I mean, you can think of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 teams. I think it would be a tough sell to try to create a 13-7 double elimination bracket. So to keep things even, you could go 12-8, but that just means one team might have the benefit of the doubt. So if we're looking at the overall standings right now, we're thinking of the true gold division being everybody from Kaiser all the way down to Southwestern, and then you got Life through St. Mary as another bracket in terms of double elimination. But will the coaches go for that when it comes down to the structure format, and will RCX decide to go that route? Who knows? I mean, those votes and those talks are going to be coming up fairly soon. But as you and I both know, Corey, the purpose of RCX's mission statement with these tournaments, as much as it is to promote the sport, is to make sure the student athletes have a good experience as well. And personally, I think it's a very tough sell to try to say it's a good experience if you're going to have everybody conglomerate combined for a double elimination tournament. I think personally, I would be stunned if all the coaches agreed, yes, let's have a 20-team double elimination. Like, I'm fully expecting to see there being some kind of division of some kind. If it's a double elimination bracket tournament, that we're going to see teams and groups broken up, or if we go back to the compass bracket that we did, or just that snakes and ladder style deal that we saw 2 years ago, that would be the only other thing I can see, to give teams a true fighting chance on what you feel is going to be the best accurate shot. But, if the student athlete experience is the priority, then the coaches should know that, hey, it's probably going to be a 12-team and an 8-team double elimination with competition fairly lining up the way it needs to be.
Look, partner, if we've got to call 38 or 39 NAIA games in 3 days, by the time we get to the championship game, we're going to be calling games like this.
There's a reason why everything's being expanded. And again, we're only talking about the NAIA side of things. We still got the JUCO teams that supposed to have an expected 10 teams participating in this upcoming tournament. I just got word today, Corey, that that's going to be a crazier event because, as you and I both know, as the flag football sport is continuing to expand and grow, there's an expectation that we might see some NCAA representatives out there just to check out the sport of flag football. And there's going to be a lot of, experience, and they're going to watch what flag football does for the championship atmosphere. So in terms of what the ambiance, for want of a better word, is going to be like, everything's getting revved up as both NJCAA and NAIA flag are already taking off to what we expect to be an exciting 2024 tournament in Atlanta.
Absolutely, and more news as events warrant. We'll tell you what we know when we know it. Other than the fact that it's in early May and we've got about a month and a week or so to go. We'll let you know what we know. Hey, when that bracket, when even the bracket shape drops, I'll be on it like white on rice. I've got the NFL flag app. It stays on my phone all year long, just so that I can hit it exactly when it comes out, so that I know, because that's what we're about here. You know who helps us do that though is our patrons, and they keep us going and making sure that we're able to cover this. And those folks, you know what? I'm going to read it backwards this week. Why not? Keep it.
Give Josue some love this time.
Give
Corey.
Josue Trujillo some love. Make him first. Zach Lance comes next. Then Debbie, Sean Chamberlain, Todd Nix, Charles A. Flowers, Dustin Wilkie, Zach Ryard, Jason Crawford, Ryan, Dylan Gonzalez, Nathan Moore, Dale Norton, Tim Burrow, Julie Lout, Stephen Cutler, Nate Soapbeer, Julian Shager, Brian Shake, Steve Speakman, Justin Hoffman, Tyler Pierce, Kyle Gregory, Hayden Frigno, Nick Ryan, Marty Seabolt, Brett Ace Willen, Jerry Quickle, Fred Christensen, Shirley LaBella, Jeremy Vobble, Roger Meyer, Bob Boone, and the GOAT, the one, the only, the Chief Blue Hawk himself, DSU Cone. Thank you for another great week on the NAIAF Ball live show. It is always an absolute pleasure to bring this to you. And, well, to all y'all out there, y'all have a great Easter. And as we, one of the great things about being in the NAIA is the pervasiveness of faith-based schools, and we wish you a good Easter and a week of remembrance of what the price of life is worth, with our Savior's death on the cross. So we thank you for sticking with us and wish you a good week, and we'll see you next week on the Twitter feed. Perfect.